Steeler Nation, what is going on? My name is Bryan Anthony Davis, and you have found another one of the fine Behind the Steel Curtain radio shows. And my name, once again, is BAD, and welcome to The Burning Question. So glad to be here once again. As always, it's the off season. The Super Bowl has ended, and it doesn't matter whether they're getting ready for the big game. Pittsburgh Steelers fans want to talk about Pittsburgh Steelers football, no matter what the topic is. Sometimes this time of year, it's hard to find a topic, but I figured we'd go into one of the discussions that is one of the greatest Steeler discussion of all time. And it's this. It's simply this. Who is the quarterback that you are going with if you're putting together your Pittsburgh Steelers all-time team? Is it one, Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger, or is it the one and only Terrence Paxton Bradshaw? It's one or the other, and you can give me many reasons why. We can go ahead and talk about that. Ezra Nehemiah he's already in. He's like, I'm going bad. So I am one of the few that has had the rare pleasure of being able to see both of these guys play in their prime. Actually, my very first game was December 5th of 1982, one of Terry Bradshaw's final games, actually. The very first live game that I've ever seen, not the very first game I've ever watched. But I was at Three River Stadium watching the Pittsburgh Steelers play the future Super Bowl 54 champion Kansas City Chiefs and destroy them on that fine December day. I got those tickets for my birthday when I believe it was December 3rd was my birthday, and I believe that was my 10th birthday. So something really exciting once again, but I got to see Terry Bradshaw play. I've got to see Ben Roethlisberger play a number of times live, and of course, over the last 15 years on television as well. Frank Crooker says, Bradshaw, not even close. Super Bowls and playoff records speak for themselves. But before we get into all of that, and I'm going to go ahead and take your questions a little bit later in on the show. So I am going to go ahead and try to ignore the live chat a little bit so I could focus on the task at hand, because I can't pass it off to one of my good buddies, Jeff Hartman. Let's give a shout out to him, or Dave Schofield, or my good friend Lance Williams, who I'm on the show with every once in a blue moon, but it needs to be more. That's something that we definitely need to do. A Lance and Bad show would be off the hook. We might get yanked after one show, but it would be awesome. Got to throw out one to my good friend Tony Defio, who we do the Steeler Hangover with on every Monday. And also one of my latest podcast partners, my good friend Nick Bellino, who we did the playoff preview with. Hopefully we'll have him back when we start talking about draft. This guy is an NFL wizard. So let me, I can't forget my new buddy, Big Bro Sco as well. I don't have a big bro, so I am going to, I'm going to start calling him Big Bro Bad, and maybe we'll have him on the show as well. But with that being said, if you want to support this show, it's as simple as this. I made my dad do this today. He's like, I don't know when your show's on. I don't know how to use YouTube. I think he called it something else. I'm like, Dad, I'm going to set this up for you. All you have to do is subscribe to BTSC Radio on YouTube or whatever your podcast platform is. He's like, platform, what's that? I'm like, just trust me here. So I put it on, and now he's probably, if he figures it out, he's probably tuning in to hear me insult him about his lack of technical know-it-all right now as we speak. So, because there's a bell, and when you hit that bell, it's going to, when you subscribe, it's going to tell you, hey, there's a show on. Big Bro and Dave are on, or Lance and Jeff are on, or Brian and Tony, or any combination of all of those guys are on. So definitely, that's how you support the show. You could also support the show through the live chat, which I'll be looking at a little bit later. And what we can do with a live chat is as simple as this. If you do throw in your hard-working money, hard-earned money, all you have to do, that you go to the top of the queue, and then we'll talk to you right away, right in that question. But with that being said, let's get on with this. This is not an age-old question, because this is a question since I would probably say the mid-2000s, maybe the late 2000s. Who's the better quarterback is really not the question, but who's the guy that you're going with? And this is tough. I'll be honest with you. I don't have an answer. And the reason I don't have an answer is because it's hard to choose between your two kids that you love the most. And these guys are the two quarterbacks that I love the most. I've had an opportunity to meet both of them. Both of them treated me very well. Right on the corner, right over there, you can't see it, but is a photo of my son and myself with Ben Roethlisberger. I have a photo of myself with Terry Bradshaw as well. Ezra Nehemiah, he's 47. He says, trust me, Ben all day. The early 80s was tough. Here's the thing. You didn't really see Terry Bradshaw very much in the early 80s. Then Dennis Sheridan jumps in and says, I'm 75. Bradshaw was a beast. So look, here's my deal. Like I said, I'm going to probably be Switzerland on this. Switzerland always gets me in trouble, but I don't really want to pick here. So I want to hear what you're going to do, what you're going to say. Isaac is taking Terry over Ben. So if you want to look at Super Bowls right away, you can say 4 Super Bowls to 2. Terry never lost one. Big Ben did. You could do that very easily. But if you look at what Ryan O'Toole says, this is probably your answer right here. Different eras. So it's kind of comparing apples to oranges. So here's what I did last week and leading into the Super Bowl on BTSC on our blog site platform. I write articles too when I get them in. And boy, I drive Jeff crazy with that. With all my responsibilities, sometimes I'm a little bit late on it, but I'm not the only one that has responsibilities. So there you go. But so I have no excuse. But I had a lot of fun in this one assignment that I gave myself. And I used to do something called Throwback Thursday, and I'd watch an old Steeler game start to finish, and I'd keep pausing it, and I'd write during it, and I would do almost a play-by-play of the whole game. I'd skip over, incidental stuff, but it was really fun to do. So what I did, I started with Super Bowl 9. I watched 10. I watched 13. I watched 14. One my parents went to and didn't take me when I was 8. And something that I complained to one Terry Bradshaw about 2 years ago at an autograph signing. And I said, yeah, I'm still mad at my dad for that. And Terry Bradshaw yelled at me. He's like, be glad you still have your dad. I would have never taken you either. You're 8. I would have taken your mom instead too. So Terry would have taken my mom to the game, but he was playing in the game. There you go. But Terry was a fantastic guy when I met him in person as well. But when I'm watching those games, I noticed a lot of things. The first thing I want to bring up is a guy named Fran Tarkenton. Now, if you know who Fran Tarkenton is, he lost 4 Super Bowls. Actually, I think maybe 3 Super Bowls, but they lost 4 in that era with the Minnesota Vikings. They were the Buffalo Bills of the late 1960s and the early 70s. They lost 4 before Buffalo did that in the 90s. So what happened there is when you're watching this game, he was a very mobile quarterback. He was the top passing quarterback in the league for 1974, and that was the Super Bowl that they played the Steelers in, Super Bowl 9. The reason I bring him up, he had 2,490 yards, so right under 2,500 yards, and he was the leading passer in the league. So why am I saying that? And I know that was a 14-game season, but still, he's the leading passer with 2,500 yards. And that's telling me that this is a much different era that we're playing in. Dennis, no, Buffalo did not lose 5, buddy. I promise you that. Buffalo lost 4 Super Bowls in a row, and they didn't play in any other. Starting in, this is, and everybody complains about this because this is where I get a little crazy and I get all around the board. But Dennis, if you look, starting in Super Bowl 25, they lost to the Giants. Then in 26, they lost to the Redskins. Then they lost that double dip to the Cowboys in 27 and 28. When Super Bowl 29 came around, that's the game the Steelers were supposed to be in. And they did not, Buffalo did not make the playoffs that year. But that's when San Diego lost to the San Francisco 49ers. And then Super Bowl 30, Pittsburgh beat Buffalo to go to the Super Bowl that year and lose to Dallas. But yeah, it was four. It was four straight games. So yeah, and now Dennis is realizing it now too. Yeah, gosh. But four losing Super Bowls were still good enough for Marv Levy to get into the Hall of Fame. Dennis doesn't know why he has 5 stuck in his head. It's because that Buffalo losing streak seemed to last forever. I would have, hey, there's no shame in thinking that. But wow, I digress. But what I'm saying is that's a completely different era. So if we are going to go ahead and compare these guys on stats alone, then it's just something you really can't do, because Ben Roethlisberger, stat-wise, just last season, I'm not talking about 2019, but 2018, he had one of the greatest passing. He had over 5,000 yards and one of the greatest passing years of his career, but his interception to touchdown ratio was not anything fantastic either. If we go ahead and look at some people were saying, we'll bring up a few things here too. Ezra says, I respect what Bradshaw did against the Oilers, but what Ben has done against the Ravens, he appreciates more. Gosh, I'm glad he said that, because it seems like it's Bradshaw had the Oilers as his main nemesis. He had the Raiders he had other nemesis also. The Dolphins were one too, but it seemed like it was the Houston Oilers. They were a division rival, and it seemed like they were always the problem for him. But he always stepped up. When he had that opportunity, he just stepped up against them. Ezra, I agree with you. Ben has the Ravens. He has other teams he has to deal with. But the one difference that I would say here, if we're going to go to something like that, I don't think that Bradshaw had a team like the Patriots that always had his number. So that's probably where I'd go there. But remember, I'm really not picking a side here. I'm just saying, how blessed were we as Steeler fans to have both of these guys? But this is your show. This is to find out who you would have taken. Deal with it says Super Bowls are more about a team as a whole than just a quarterback. Super Bowls are won with defenses. Bradshaw had the steel curtain. Roethlisberger would have won just as many with that D. Ben is the overall better QB. So you're starting a team, deal with it. You want number 7, Ben? I respect that. If we go ahead and look more, Snowman says Bradshaw had Swan, Stallworth, Harris, Cunningham. Hey, Ben had some of those guys. Not those guys, but Ben had Hines. He had Antonio Brown before he went off the rails. He had Mike Wallace. He had Le'Veon Bell. He had Fast Willie Parker. He had Heath Miller, and I'm taking Heath Miller any day over Benny Cunningham. May he rest in peace. Heath Miller, by far the better tight end. So there you go there. But that's, that is an argument as well. But what I'm trying to say is this is your Steeler all-time team, or if you're starting a franchise with one of these guys in their prime or as a rookie or what have you, who are you taking? And a lot of it for me has to do with instinct and how you play the game. And both of them, I loved how both of those guys played a game. Terry Bradshaw is definitely willing to run, says Isaac. But here's the thing with that. Ben Roethlisberger, earlier in his career, man, that guy ran. That guy was he could extend plays more than anybody. Isaac's still taking Terry over Ben. The original TB12, the blonde bomber. He was TB12 before this dude Brady was. So I will tell you that. Bradshaw has more Super Bowls because the steel curtain. Ben would have had that D also. Yeah, that's still deal with it. Frank Crooker said it. I didn't even realize that he said that. Terry Bradshaw, the original TB12. I'm going to, I just said that, but you came up with it first, so I'm giving you credit for it, Frank. There you go. you look at this now. I'm going back to a comment that Ezra said earlier, that he wants Ben all day because the 80s were tough. But remember, he didn't play that much. Terry Bradshaw did not play that much in the 1980s. Not much at all. Bradshaw was he was hampered by that elbow. And it's ironic that it might be the same type of injury that Ben Roethlisberger is going through. And Ben Roethlisberger has, because of technology, because of it being almost 40 years later, has a better chance to come back from that. Frank Crooker says, 2 Super Bowl MVPs on top of the 4 Super Bowls, 1 NFL MVP. He loves Ben, but Terry was clutch in the playoffs. And I told you that I had an opportunity to watch those games. And he was just amazing to watch. I was out to eat today. They had the NFL Network on. My kids are like, hey, the Steelers are on. They're playing the Cardinals. And I'm like, okay. And I knew exactly what it was. It was a full replay of Super Bowl 43. And my daughter's all happy because the Steelers were winning. I'm like, you were in mom's belly during that Super Bowl. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, you were just a couple months away. You were 3 months away at that point. She's like, oh, I thought they were on now. I'm like, well, the Super Bowl ends everything, honey. But I appreciate your excitement. Bo Chosen wants Bradshaw. Senor Slim. He's 33, and of course he wants Big Ben all day. Senor Slim, and this is something that we're going to have when we do something like this. This is a generational question because you didn't get a chance to watch Bradshaw play. In fact, he retired before you were born. So you're right, and you're the one saying it. Before I say it, of course I'm going to go with the Big Ben all day. Man, you would have loved those days. You would have loved to have been watching games with him as your quarterback as well. However, once again, this is really one of those, this is just a preference question, but it's a fantastic question. Young Wood Burning. Youngin Wood Burning. I got to find out what that nickname means, what that username means one of these days. Ben, because of it's my generation. Bradshaw, because he has carried great face and notoriety. Man, he was fantastic watching those games. And one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time was that Super Bowl 13. And they're still considering that one of the great ones. Now it's been eclipsed, so it keeps on going down. But at that time in 1978, that was considered as the game. And I tell you what, he had a few interceptions early in that game. And somebody brought this up the other day. We're watching like Mahomes has 2 interceptions. He can't be MVP. And I'm like, now Bradshaw had those. But what he did in that game, besides the interceptions, was absolutely incredible. Lynn Swann had 100 and some yards in that game. A lot of catches. John Stallworth only had 3 catches. I think he might have ended with 4 for 151 yards, and then he got hurt. If John Stallworth doesn't get hurt in that game, he is going absolutely insane in that ball game. At that point, it almost seemed like he was going to reach 200 yards, because at that point in his career, Terry Bradshaw realized that John Stallworth was his number one guy. He was his number one receiver. He still had Lynn Swann, and he still loved to use Lynn Swann. But the thing about that, Lynn Swann was his guy early, and then Stallworth became his guy later, and they just gelled more. Senor Slim says, trust me, I wish I came up in the 70s for more reasons than the Steelers. Man, you and me both. And it isn't just to go see ABBA play. It's not that. The 70s were a unique time. I didn't get to enjoy them because I was born in 71. So I enjoyed them, but I didn't get to enjoy them as a young adult, and the Studio 54 and all the crazy stuff that went on socially at that time. Dennis, you got to tell us about what the 70s were like as a young man out there on the scene. I'd like a time machine, go back and party with Dennis. Northtop says, are we talking young scramble Ben or old slinger Ben? Hey, this is the Ben that you want. That's fine. Ezra, he's bringing up second game of the season, torrential rain coming down to Miami. Ben throws a dime to the pylon. Even Parcells said this kid is special. Yeah, that was actually, I hate to be corrected, that was Ben's first start, actually. But the third game of the season, that was moved to the night. And the reason that was moved was because of those torrential downpours. And they moved that to a primetime Sunday night game. But there was another primetime Sunday night game as well. So that was week 3. The first game of the season was a win against the Raiders. I believe a 16-13 win or something like that. It was just it wasn't the best offensive showing with Tommy Maddox there. And then Tommy goes down in week 2, and then Ben comes in. So, gosh, some of these I can't read. Let's see. I asked Dennis, so let's see what he says. Trust me, the 70s weren't all that great. Now the 60s, that's where the action was. He also grew up in the 50s, so I'm just a JD from Philly singing R&R on the corner. Is that like, okay, that's awesome. So, of course, I love, and darn it, I love the Rocky movies. And when they're on the corner with the trash can with the fire, and you've got Frank Stallone, Sly Stallone's brother, and they're singing "Take Me Back, do take me back." That's Philly. So Dennis, if you're telling me that's what they really did on the corner, singing the music, rock and roll on the corner, and singing like that, doo-wop, that would have been awesome. I want that time machine too, and then we'll go get a Philly cheesesteak and party like that. Dennis, man, I just want to sit down with Dennis. And a shout out to my man here. I'm bringing up 2 a.m. bad curtains. Never going to live down the 2 a.m. I love me some Lance. That's awesome. These are different curtains, and I don't think these are too bad either. This is a guest room that I'm renovating, and so if I ever get it done, yep. Dennis says we did it bad all day long. Man, did it take me back? Did it do? Woo. I'm feeling funky now. I want to like. You realize what my wife would do if I brought in a trash can and set it on fire, and then I was just singing around it? I would get in a lot of trouble. So we're not going to do that. And then I would like accidentally set the curtains on fire, and then I'd get more trouble for that. So we're not going to do that. But that would be great. And I'm mentioning Frank Stallone. If you don't know who Frank Stallone is, he actually had a hit song, a top 10 song from 1983 from a movie that his brother directed. Sylvester Stallone actually directed the follow-up, the sequel to Saturday Night Fever, calling Staying Alive. And Frank Stallone had a song called Far From Over. And if you ever have a chance to check that one out, it's pretty darn good. Snowman says Stallworth played 14 years. Swan didn't. But here's the thing about that. And I'm going to bring that up. Here's the thing about that. But still, most of those games that they played were with Bradshaw. Those extra year that they played together, because Swan left after the 82 season. Stallworth did not play at all in the 83 season. He came back in the 84 season and had a monster year alongside Louis Lips with the quarterback David Woodley and Mark Malone, and he was the comeback player of the year. He was amazing that year. What a fantastic year. But basically, he had the same amount of time with Bradshaw that Swan did. So that's, I could actually say that if you look at the numbers, I mean, because of injury, there might be a tweak here and there, but that's what happened as far as Stallworth and Swan, pretty much the same amount of time. So I could actually tell you that Stallworth played until 1987. And gosh, he had just a phenomenal career. And they came up in the same draft. And now that rookie class is getting even more acclaim. Now, and the reason it's getting more acclaim is because Donnie Shell's now in, and he wasn't even drafted. He was an undrafted free agent. But you had your first round pick, boom, Hall of Fame, Lynn Swann. Actually, not the last one to get in from that group. Third to last, second round pick out of Kent State, Jack Lambert, boom, Hall of Fame. Fourth round pick, Mike Webster. Oh, excuse me. No. John Stallworth was the fourth round pick. And out of Alabama A&M, and the fifth round pick, Mike Webster out of Wisconsin, boom, Hall of Fame. All four of those guys Hall of Fame. And then you throw in the fact that you have an undrafted free agent, a safety, who almost went. He almost went to the Denver Broncos. And this was just explained a couple of weeks ago when he got the nod. And the reason he didn't go, because his college coach said, Donnie, I know you want to go to the Broncos. You need to go to Pittsburgh. This team's on the verge. It's a blue-collar team. They work hard. They play tough. That is your team. And so he's like, all right, I'll go there, because he had offers from both places. And he's almost a Denver Bronco. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine? That would be absolutely amazing. Ezra says, bad, great memory. You know why I have such great memories of John Stallworth in that season? Because in your life, you have certain years that mean a lot to you. As I heard this, and maybe it's from the movie Stand By Me, but a lot of people remember the year that they were 12 over a lot of things. And I remember that 1984 year when I was 12 more than anything. I love the music from 84 more than anything. I love the movies. I love the TV. I love everything from 1984. And I love that Steeler team from 1984 that went all the way to the AFC Championship game. And it's just, it is just a fun year. And that year does not happen without a resurgence from one John Stallworth. And that was just absolutely, that's one of my favorites. I've got other favorite Steeler years. I'll tell you 1989 is a favorite Steeler year of mine. 2002 is a definite favorite Steeler year of mine. And those are 3 years that they did not go to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl. It was just, I mean, they're just kind of special seasons. And you have a few of those. That 2002 season was your Tommy Maddox season. That 1989 season was the Bubby season where they beat on New Year's Eve the Gary Grandview and the Houston Oilers. And if you don't know what Gary Grandview means, that's actually really funny. But so what the Steelers would do, I mean, gosh, Chuck Noll was as old school as you go. And then there comes Jerry Glanville on the scene. And this is a guy that thought Chuck Noll was a fuddy-duddy and a really stuffy guy. And he kind of was. But, I mean, to a young guy that wore all black, and Jerry Glanville thought he was Johnny Cash, young Johnny Cash. And he just would screw around. He would have a good time. I have no problem with it. He would always leave tickets for Elvis. But he would get in these fights with Chuck Noll, and he would try to badger Chuck Noll. So Chuck Noll actually, legend has it, and this happened. I don't know if Chuck Noll ordered the hit, so to speak, but it seems in 1989, Chuck Noll allegedly went to the PA announcer in Three River Stadium and had them announce Gary Grandview in the Houston Oilers. Now that actually happened, but I don't know if Chuck Noll actually did it. Back to when you were 12 years old, Cheryl broke Dennis's heart when he was in 12, but he got over it when he was 12 years old. So I guess not everything goes your way when you're 12. One of the people asked me why I like the show Stranger Things so much. I watch it with my family. My daughter loves it. She just had to do a Pinewood Derby card. It was a Stranger Things themed. And if you've never watched Stranger Things and you're my age, it's actually a really great show to watch. And the reason I like it so much is they were the exact same age. And the first season took place in 1983 at the same age I was in 1983. and they were talking about a movie in that called All the Right Moves with Tom Cruise as a movie they wanted to see. That movie was filmed in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And that was, I wasn't in the movie, but I was at the filming of the movie during the football game in the crowd scene. You can't see me. But that's something that happened around that time. And that was featured in that movie as well. So if you've never watched Stranger Things, it's coming to the end in late 2020 with season 4, a 2-part season 4. But it makes you think about growing up in the 80s all over again. Getting Bent with Bo says a lot of movies have been filmed in Pennsylvania. I think you're probably referring to the famed Zach and Miri Make a Porno, which was filmed in Pittsburgh, where they actually mentioned Ben Roethlisberger in that movie. Kind of a really funny movie, actually. And he's wearing a Monroeville Zombies, not Ben, but this guy's wearing a Monroeville Zombies shirt as there's actually a semi-pro hockey team called the Zombies, which is a throwback to the Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, any of the Dead, the zombie movies. Hey, man, before you had Walking Dead, you had those Frank Romero movies, and he just passed away a couple of years ago. A lot of great Western Pennsylvania movies. An Academy Award movie set in Western Pennsylvania in the Pittsburgh area, The Deer Hunter. I mean, enough said right there. A lot of great stuff. Slapshot. I was actually, not a lot of people, now I have no recollection of this. My mom was paid for this movie as an extra, and I have some friends of the family that were actually in this movie, and you could see them. But Slapshot was the film, and actually one of the hockey players seen prominently in the movie, a guy named Billy Charlebois. He was the blonde defenseman, always had the two twins on his side. That was a gentleman named Guido Tanisi, who played for the Johnstown Jets, and he was one of my Pee Wee football coaches. Actually, from Slapshot, a lot of those players ended up playing right there in Johnstown. The middle Hanson, a guy named Steve Carlson, was the coach, one of the coaches of Bishop McCourt when they went on a 4-year stretch of winning the Pennsylvania state title in hockey in the early 2000s. Paul Newman was in Slapshot, and I was at the filming of that too. I was at the final hockey game, but I was 4 years old and I have no absolute recollection of that movie whatsoever. So Slapshot and All the Right Moves filmed in the great Johnstown, Pennsylvania. The thing about that, though, is the reason they were filmed there was because it was a depressed steel town at the time. Johnstown's done some better things since then, so that's fantastic. Logan says, my brother played hockey with Hanson's son for the Pittsburgh Hornets. I just had a chance to have my picture taken in a photo opportunity earlier this year at a autograph show, the autograph show that I got to meet James Conner as well. But I have a picture of them putting me in a headlock and allegedly beating me up, and they all signed it. It's a great moment. I'll have to pull that out one day and show you all. As we get down to the end of the show, we really don't have an answer to the burning question. And here's the best part about it, is because there's no true answer. You're right. We can't compare apples to oranges here. It's just your preference. Do you want the blonde bomber leading your team, or do you want Big Ben? And I love both of these guys. And I got to tell you that both of these guys were all-time greats. And it's a darn shame, and somebody brought it up earlier, it's a shame that Terry Bradshaw was left off of the 100 greatest players of all time team. So that is absolutely a shame. Getting Bent with Bo is bringing up RoboCop. I didn't know RoboCop or Pretty Woman. I thought that was filmed in Los Angeles. Maybe there was a part of it. All the Dead movies, Superstar, Silence of the Lambs, Groundhog Day, Dogma, Rockstar. Interesting. One, of course, you got to bring up, you can't forget The Dark Knight Rises. That's probably one that you can go ahead and bring up, with Bain and Hines Ward's scoring that awesome touchdown as the whole stadium's blowing up. So yeah, that was filmed. I could not go to the filming of that. That filming was on my son's birthday, and it was like his third or fourth birthday. We were having a party, and there was no way I was getting out of it. No way I wanted to miss my son's birthday party, but I was bummed. And Train was playing at the Pirates game that day too. So I have a buddy. Ironically, he's a Broncos fan, but he's a Pirates fan, and he went to the filming of that game, the filming of that movie. Then he went to the Train concert and the Pirate game. So that's really interesting. Right O'Toole says, wonder how Bradshaw's career would have gone if he handled the elbow surgery differently. That was just a weird time. He even went to, did he have a veterinarian do it? That's funny. 1984, gosh, we're talking 36 years ago. Just a way different time. He even, he was looking at all anybody, anybody like witch doctors, anybody that could help him out. So there you go. It was just a different time. I mean, different eras. We talk about the different eras and stats. What would have Bradshaw have done if he played in this era of football? If he played in Ben Roethlisberger's time, what would have he done? Of course, he doesn't have the legends around him, but he still has a fast Willie Parker. He still has a Le'Veon Bell. He still has an Antonio Brown. He still has Hines Ward and Mike Wallace. He still has some players to play with. So the one thing that I will say here is it's going to be, I mean, it's very easy to say that Ben Roethlisberger did not have the supporting cast that Bradshaw did. And, I mean, sure. But the thing about that is he still had a really good supporting cast. I'm hiring Ezra Nehemiah as my new producer. Blunt or Polamalu? Man, that's a great topic. I want to even throw in something more on that. How about Blunt, Polamalu, and Hot Rod Woodson? Make that a 3-pack there. So that would be really good too. It's different eras. It's really interesting what you can think of. Here's a question that as I extend things, as I always do, and this is really what it is like to go out and have a soda with me or a beer or anything. I just go from topic to topic, and I know that's crazy for some of you, so I do apologize. For the ones who stick with me, man, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I read the comments. Some of you think, oh, this guy's terrible. Hey, I appreciate that too. I'm just an average guy, an average fan with a forum, and sometimes my mind goes all over the place. I drive my wife crazy. I drive my kids crazy, and my buddies crazy. But if I think of it, I say it. That's the problem. Filter's gone. The filter is absolutely gone. So here's the question. If you had to put any Steeler from the 1970s on this team, on this upcoming 2020 team, who would you put on it? Now let's go vice versa. Who would you take from 2020 and put on the Steeler teams of the 70s to make them better? Maybe that's something we do in the future. Actually, let's marinate that. Don't answer that now. I'm asking you, don't answer that now. Maybe that's for the future too. But that should be a lot of fun. Bo has never had an Iron City, but he's about drinking 30,000 Yinglings. That's awesome. I'm a Coca-Cola guy or a Dr. Pepper guy, but I could get just as crazy as anybody else on sugar, and that's not a good thing. Oh, wow. Here we go. Snowman, I'm going to say this right now. As far as super chats go, I am nominating Snowman for the BTSC Super Chat Hall of Fame. Gives $5. Are you guys doing a draft show and on all 3 days of the draft? So that has not been decided. We're throwing some things around there though too. So one of the things, we're going to have draft shows. We're still going to do it. We're going to celebrate. A lot of people think, and I'm going to tell you right here, you heard it here first. So you want to take this to the bank. With the 18th selection of the 2020 draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to take this kid out of Alabama, a safety named Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's what they're going to use their 18th pick overall on. You heard it here first. BAD told you. So there you go. So we're going to celebrate that. We are going to celebrate Minkah on draft day, and we're going to talk about what everybody else is doing. Trying to get Nicky Bellino in the mix because he's a guy that really knows a lot about the draft. Dave, myself, Lance, Big Bro Sco, Tony, we're going to try to get a lot of people involved in this. Hey, we might even be live somewhere since the Steelers don't have a pick on the first night. That's something that we're talking about as well. So a lot of things to talk about. We're going to also talk about, Mark Davison's asking, I'm sure we'll be talking about how the Bengals find a way to screw up this draft, even with Joe Burrow on the board. Hey, think about this. Is Joe Burrow going to pull a John Elway or an Eli Manning and say, I'm not going there? Look, I don't love that move, but if I'm an insider for Joe Burrow, I'm like, don't go to Cincinnati. Do whatever you can. Threaten to go to the XFL. By the way, XFL play today was not horrible football. In fact, my dad, who is the guy that would say that Vince McMahon, this league, he was like, this isn't bad football. And I was like, wow, I couldn't play. So I sat down. It was not bad football. I hope it could last. I really hope it could last, and they do it right. This guy is really trying to figure it out. And second time around for Vince McMahon, he is he's trying to make this work. He knows he's going to lose about $375 million off the bat, but he's trying to get to that second contract. I watched the DC Defenders. Eli Rogers was there. Someone just mentioned Sammy Coates. Ryan says Sammy Coates is playing right now. Landry Jones plays tomorrow. Other guys, Duran Grant was on that Washington Defender, that DC Defender team. A buddy of mine that I've done some work has credentials for the DC Defenders now through a local show that I moonlight with, and I'm going to try to go down and see a DC Defender game because that seems like a lot of fun. But you know what? Give these guys an outlet. These guys are protected. You can't just snatch them from the XFL like you were with the AAF last year. But there should be some decent football. Really, there's some innovations there too with the kickoffs, with the field goals, the 2-point conversions. Lots of interesting things. Hey, it beats watching nothing, right? My wife right now, she's out there right now. You know why I'm here with you and I'm extending the show? Because my wife right now is binge watching Private Practice. Come on. I'd rather be talking to you guys for the next 6 hours than watching Addison Shepherd and Sam and the gang. I know who all these people are. I don't want to. I don't want to know who Private Practice or anything is. It's a Grey's Anatomy Shonda Rhimes spinoff. I don't want to be a part of that. I want to watch the XFL, so I'm going to find a way to go watch the XFL right now instead of that. So there you go. One last thing about the XFL that I'm going to say. With that collective bargaining agreement expiring in the NFL, they might be able to survive a whole lot easier. And I think that might not go as long as you think because of the existence of the XFL. I think the NFL might try to clean things up a little quicker because of the competition. What made the USFL, another great thing about the 80s, 83, 84. I had the Pittsburgh Maulers back in 1984 when I was 12 years old. I still have the same exact t-shirt that I wore. Doesn't fit. Definitely doesn't fit. But the really cool thing about the USFL is they drafted guys like Herschel Walker. They drafted guys like Jim Kelly. You had Dieter Brock there, who was amazing in that league. You had so many players. Steve Young, LA Express. I remember really being interested in these guys. I remember teams like the Denver Cold and the San Antonio Gunslingers and the Tampa Bay Bandits. And I remember all of that. And actually, the owner of the New Jersey Generals, who had Doug Flutie and had Herschel Walker, was a guy you may have heard of by the name of, I think it was Donald something, Trump, something like that. Donald Trump. Really funny if you ever want to email, if you ever want to Google something funny, Google angry letter from Memphis Showboat's owner to Donald Trump back when they were owners in the USFL. Really good stuff. Also, the USFL 30 for 30 on ESPN. Really good. Philadelphia Stars were one of your first teams to win the title. Not the first, though. The Michigan Panthers beat them on Monday Night Football in the final game in the USFL Bowl or the USFL Championship game. Getting bent with Bo says he watches those games on YouTube. Man, I need to do that. That's something I really need to do. Good for there was, a lot of people don't think that there was good football in the 80s because the Steelers weren't great. Steelers weren't as bad as you thought in the 1980s either. I know that's crazy for me to say. I actually really love Pittsburgh Steelers 1980s football as well. And I love the live chat, and I love everybody in BTSC Steeler Nation. Thank you so much. So with that being said, we appreciate all of you for spending your time on a Saturday night. You're not binge watching Private Practice. You're hanging out with me. That means so much. You're keeping me from watching Private Practice as well. So thank you. I know I'm going to get stuck with that. So thank you so much for all of your time. Look, man, whether it's anything that pops up here on BTSC radio, and I said, look, man, but look, gentlemen, ladies, look at y'all. We love you because you're family here. Whatever comes up, there's something for you, even in the off season. And that's why I love having you guys around, because you love Steeler football, you crave Steeler football, and you're here for us. So with that being said, for all of you out in BTSC Nation, for all of the folks on the BTSC team, whether it be Jeff, Dave, Big Bro, whether it be Lance, Tony, Nick, myself, we love you. Thank you. Have a great week. I'll see you once again on Monday with Tony Defio and the Steelers Hangover. But until then, my friend, you keep thinking Steelers. 2020 is here, and the season's right around the corner. And if anybody has something to say about it, it's us here at BTSC. I love you all. Good night.